So in this lesson, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use that property called the distributive property to solve algebraic equations. So the steps to doing this is we distribute to simplify the equation. We do the first inverse operation to both sides and then simplify. Do the second inverse operation to both sides and simplify. And then we verify our solution. So let's go ahead and do it. So the problem is right now, this side is a little complicated. So we want to simplify it. And whenever I see a factor being multiplied by a group that's separated by addition or subtraction, I think distributive property. So I'm only going to distribute on the side I need to distribute to. So I have to distribute 5 times 2x. 5 times 2 is 10. And 10 times x is 10x. Then I have 5 times negative 1. So yes, I keep saying negative when indeed it's subtraction there. The subtraction is defined as adding the opposites. So it's like the problem really saying 2 times x plus negative 1. So positive times a negative is a negative. So I have minus 5 equals negative 35. Now I'm ready to go ahead and solve the equation. So I'm going to do the first inverse operation. So I'm working outside in, and so I got to get rid of subtracting 5. So the inverse of subtracting 5 is 2. Add 5. And I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And then I simplify. So now on the left side, when I have negative 5 plus 5, that makes a 0 pair. So I can say that they cancel each other. And what's left over? 10 times x. And that's because they're inverse operations. Now over here I have negative 35 and 5. I have more negatives than positives. So I have exactly 30 more negatives than I need. So I have 10 times x equals negative 30. So I'm ready to do the second inverse operation. So remember, this expression says 10 times x. So I'm going to divide by 10. And whatever I do to the left side, I do to the right. And now what do I have left over? Well, 10 divided by 10 is 1. 1 times x is x. Negative 30 divided by 10. Negative divided by positive is negative. 30 divided by 10 is 3. So my solution, I think right now, is x is negative 3. But I want to verify that because that's the last thing I should do. So to verify, I go back to my original equation and I'm going to replace the variable with what I believe is my solution, negative 3. And I want to see, do I get negative 35? So I don't have to distribute because I don't have any unknowns. So I'm just going to go ahead and follow order of operations, which is parentheses first. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 take away 1 is negative 7. And positive 5 times negative 7 is indeed negative 35. So I'm correct. So what I want you to do here is stop, pause the video, and do this first problem and see what you get. So let's see how you did. Okay, so first we're distributing 1/2 times x. 1/2 times x. Then we have 1/2 times negative 6. Well, half of 6 is 3. But it's like a negative, so it's negative 3. And it still equals negative 5. So now I'm going to do my first inverse operation. I'm going to add 3. So negative 3 plus 3 gives us 0, which leaves the left side with 1/2 times x. And on the right side, we have 5 negatives and 3 positives, which means when I'm adding, I have more negatives, and I have exactly 2 more negatives. which gives me 1/2 times x equals -2. So now I'm ready for my second inverse operation, which is to divide by 1/2. Okay, now, a little thing. Remember when you're dividing by a fraction, it means to multiply by the reciprocal? Well, if we go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal of 1/2, it's the same as multiplying by 2/1. So there's two ways you could actually handle this problem. So there's an or here. Or you could do this. When you have 1/2 x equals -2, you could multiply by the reciprocal. 1/2 divided by 1/2 is 1. And we get x. And then -2 divided by 1/2 is the same as -2 times 2/1, which is the same as -4. And then over here, if I had done it this way, 2 times 1, 1 times 2 makes 2/2, which is 1. And -2 times 2/1 is -4. So now go ahead and do the second one. And let's see how we did. So first we distributed 3 times 2 times b. Remember, this is the same as adding a negative. 3 times -7 is -21. First inverse operation, I'm going to add 21 to both sides because remember I work outside in. So -21 is the one I got to go first. 18 and 21 is 39. -21 and +21 make 0. And if I add 0 to anything, I get back what I started with, which is why it's 6b. Next, I'm going to divide both sides by 6. 6 divided by 6 makes 1. 1 times b is b. 39 divided by 6 isn't an exact value, so I could write it as a fraction. 3 goes into 39 13 times, and 3 goes into 6 twice. Now, that one may look like you're not right, but let's check. 3 times 2 times 13/2 minus 7. So remember, this is 2/1. 2's cancel, leaving us 13 minus 7. And then there's that 3. 13 minus 7 is 6. And 3 times 6 is 18, which is what we were expecting. So guess what I want you to do next? That's right. Give a little pause, try this one, and see how you do. Okay, so how did it go? So this time we were distributing a negative number. So I have -2 times 1 4/10, which would be -2 8/10 times k. Then, remember, if I treat this like adding the opposite, it means I'm doing a negative times a negative. So that would give me a positive 6 4/10 equals 8/10. So now I'm ready to do the inverse. So here's my k, and that means I need to get rid of the 6 4/10 first. So I'm going to subtract 6 4/10 from both sides. So let's look at that on the right side, because we know 6 4/10 minus 6 4/10 makes 0, leaving me -2 8/10 k. Because we know that 6 4/10 minus 6 4/10 leaves me 0, leaving me with -2 8/10 times k. But over here, remember, this means add the opposite. So that means I have more negatives than positives, and I need to subtract, giving me -5 6/10. So now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2 and 8 tenths. Now remembering my operations, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 2 and 8 tenths divided by 2 and 8 tenths is 1, so it leaves me 1K. Wish I had that much money in the bank. Negative divided by a negative is positive. 5 and 6 tenths divided by 2 and 8 tenths is 2. So my solution is 2. And if I go back and I put it into the original problem by substituting 2 for K, I have following order of operations: 2 and 8 tenths minus 3 and 2 tenths, which is negative 4 tenths. And then remember I have negative 2 there still. And negative times a negative is a positive. And 2 times 4 is 8, giving me 8 tenths, which is what I was expecting. Okay, thanks for tuning in.